hair though. She was kind of waiting for a request or something. And anyway, he let her finish combing her hair, and then he very politely asked her, "So would you like to, run away with me?" She said, "Yeah, well, you big right, yeah." And they ran away together and had a great old time for themselves, no doubt. Giggity giggity was what they said in the old ancient books, I think, or something like that. Now, of course, this upset a lot of people, and there was one in particular, the King of Plains, and he was very, very angry because he was besotted and obsessed with this daughter of a king of the Tuatha, and well, he wanted to marry her and have her all for himself, and so he followed them up and down all over the other world, and they couldn't get away from him until they realized that they had to go and hide, not in the other world, but slip inside of this world, where all of the Fianna were running around. The Fianna were led by Fionn McCool, and they were in a great feasting hall at the harvest time, having a bountiful feast, drinking themselves silly and feeding themselves full. And well, in came two not very inconspicuous people. They were dressed in animal skins. Very strange looking. You see, the lad with the big green eyes had told his wife now that poor people dress in stitches, garments that are torn and worn through, and so they gathered up skins of animals and just kind of thrown themselves together. And well, they looked very odd. These were coats of animals that hadn't been tanned, hadn't been dressed, and hadn't been dried out properly, so they kind of stank a little bit. And when they walked in the room, they just had skins falling off them. They didn't look poor, they looked amazing. And white skin, beautiful emerald eyes, piercing all through the hall, and people knew they were something different about these two. And Fiona asked the lad of skins what his crack was. In that way, exactly. What's your crack? Story. And so he replied that they were asking to go into service of the Fianna. Alright, Fionn never refused a helping hand. After all, it was a fucking rake of stuff to dig up, probably. So he had put him to work, and his wife was put to work as well. Now, he saw them talking over in the corner, and she was asking him to lay low, to be cool, to not mess around too much, to not show off. But then Fionn decided they'd go hunting the next day. Hunting was the favourite thing for them, to go out and play and hunt and kill as many things as they could and test each other, their strength and their speed, and how agile and how many things they could go bring back. And well, the lad of skins, he said that he'll take the lowlands, on his own, mind you, and let the lads take the highlands, and we'll see how we all do. Fionn wasn't really sure how to make of this, but he left them off. When they came back after a very good day hunting, so Fionn thought, they saw the lad of skins carrying such a bounty of dead things he couldn't believe. It was a rake of dead rabbits. He was dragging a boar, and in between his legs, well, it was a stag. He said, "No, I won't kill him, he's deadly." I should leave him alone. But he could have, that's the point. Now anyway, he had so many things that he outweighed all of the Fianna's hunting. They were all very surprised. Things started to get whispered about the lad of skins. He must be of a different race. Where's he from? He never mentions this. The wife was keeping to herself and keeping quiet and actually managing to blend in. For fear of losing their life to the other world, they wanted to stay inconspicuous. Head down, work away. Lad of skins was a bit shy of that. It's alright. Now, eventually Conan Whale, who never had a pleasant word to say if he could say something unkind. He's that kind of a fellow. We all know that. Now, he told Fionn that he didn't trust this lad of skins, and he should be given a task to test him. So Fionn thought about this and thought, well, this lad of skins is so brilliant at everything he seems to do that I'll give him a great test. I'll send him to the other world, to the King of Floods, to steal the cauldron of plenty that never ran empty. And if he comes back with it, he'll have proven his trust. And so, he sent him off. The lad of skins, when he took out of his pocket 2 sticks and banged them together in a huge boat, just came upon the shore. He jumped out into it and sailed across into the other world. As a mist came down, he entered into 3 times 50 islands of the other world, and he went straight for the King of Floods. And there was a great banquet there as well, and many people were having a great feast and merriment and joking around, eating fish and chips or whatever you like. And, well, the lad of skins called out, "This is shite crack. No one even offered me a drink." Now, the King of the Floods was appalled to have his hospitality belittled so much like this, and so he pointed this stranger to the cauldron of plenty, which never ran empty, and said, "Have your pick." And the lad of skins, well, he picked it up and ran out the door with it. And he legged it. He was very fast, this fella. And he jumped back into the boat and he put it down and he said, "That wasn't very fair, was it? Nah, I'll go back. I'll go back and fight for it. That's the right thing to do." And so he smiled to himself, took out his sword and shield, and ran up to the King of Floods, who at this stage had his army ready. And the lad of skins cut right through them, ran all the way around, cut through them again, and decided, "Yeah, that's probably enough for that. That's fair. I think I've won it now." Leapt onto the boat and away he went. When he came back to Ireland and presented Fionn with the cauldron of plenty, which never ran empty, and the Fianna rejoiced. Now they could literally have anything they wanted from the cauldron because it never ran empty. It was great. And so the Fianna had many feasts and merriments, and they all forgot about this lad of skins not being one of them and potentially being one of the Fae, the Cuchulainn, the ones you'd be weary of. People muttered about him, but they left him and his wife to themselves because you wouldn't want to interfere with those people who had the sparkle in their eyes, because they're shapeshifters and they could put a whatever on you. You just want to mess with them. Now, time went by the way it does normally, and it seemed that almost a year had gone by. And this was the end of the service of the lad of skin. But Fionn was bathing in a pool, in a cave with rocks all around. He was staring at this ceiling, and all of a sudden he heard an echoing voice coming from the water. The King of Floods seemed to speak now to him, and he said, "Fionn McCool, I know you have the cauldron of plenty that never runs empty, my cauldron. You'll fight for it, or you'll give it back to me." Fionn said, "Oh, anyway, all right." Now, he didn't want to give it back at all. He said something like that, paraphrase. Now, he decided he'd go to the lad of skins, and he asked him to come with him. He liked the cut of his chin. Whatever it was about him, he just liked. Yes, he was harmless, yes, he was innocent, but he was very good at basically everything, and so he wanted him on his side. And so he asked the lad of skins, who is now no longer in service to him, would he come and join him in a great and furious fight for honour, for bromance, for just this crack of it all, to come and fight the King of Floods. Well, the lad of skins said, "Look, it's not really up to me. The wife, you see, she's the one who makes all of the decisions, so you better go ask her. And look, I'll tell you this, and I'll only tell you, don't tell anyone else now. If you want her to say yes, because she's probably going to say no, she's definitely going to say no, there's no way she's going to say yes. So, if you catch her when she's combing her hair, she can't really say no, because, wink, wink, don't judge. Right? Just don't ask for anything else though, okay? Trust me, Fionn." And so with this huge exhibition of trust that was laid at Fionn's feet, he waited and he watched as, well, the lad of skin's wife was brushing her hair. And he said, "Would you mind if I bring your man away to the other world to fight the King of Floods?" She gave him a look like she had not given someone for a very long time. Oh, she gave him one of those looks. She wasn't happy with him at all. She said, "All right, promise me this. Promise me, no matter what happens, you will bring him back to me. If he goes to the other world, there's a good chance he could die. And if he dies, bring him back and fly a red flag. But if he survives, well, fly a grey-green flag." Now, they left, and then once more the lad of skins, he banged the sticks together, and a great boat formed. Fionn McCool and the lad of skins, only these two, they got onto this boat where the wind blew and it seemed different. They knew they were going for a great adventure now, but it was changed. The mood between the two men now was different, subdued. They were getting themselves ready for a great fight. and the winds blew them into the other world. And when they landed, the king of Flood's land, a huge army was there, and Fionn had the ancient dripping hazel shield in his hand, that great shield that had been made out of the tree that had grown from the lake that had been burned in the ground by Balor of the evil eye. So that's another story for another time. And with this great shield, his great sword, and a lot of skins who ran around 3 times that army, they fought a great fight, a fight that we don't know much of. It could have gone on for 3 days and 3 nights, or for 3 months. The thing was, whatever way time moved, that day they came back on that boat, alive and well, and with the cauldron plenty, which never ran empty. And as they were sailing back toward and joyous and happy in their own company, they were intercepted by a strange boat. The king of the plains had found the lad of skins. This man hated the lad of skins from the day he had run away with his wife. And so he jumped on board and he pointed to the lad of skins and said, "You and I will fight this day." And so they went into a magic battle then. And the lad of skins said to Fionn, "Don't get involved in this because you'll get swept up in this spell and you won't be able to get out of it." And so they changed form. They changed to young boys, quick and agile and fast, darting and hitting and wrestling until they seemed in front of Fionn's eyes now to grow, to age, to be a masterful strike of sword and spear as they went around that boat with agility and strength. But in front of Fionn's eyes they aged, still growing hair old and grey, and they were cunning and clever in their fight until they shape-shifted once more and they became young puppies, snarling and snapping and yelping around until the dogs they grew, huge hounds they were, snarling and snatching and ripping each other apart. But those 2 dogs, they aged as well, and they grew grey hair until they were panting, and then they changed, young foals now, kicking and bucking till 2 great stallions stood in front of Fionn with amazement, and the burning sun not moving in the sky. He could not tell what had done, what had time happened. Had it stopped still, or was it moving? Had he been watching 1,000 years, or were these stags fighting for just a moment as they too became old and grey? And now 2 young birds, they flew and fluttered and pecked and clawed and caught as great wings of older birds went swooping around, and they both pecked each other's hearts out of their chests and fell down on the deck of the boat. The 2 of them now dead, and Fionn now knew to fly the red flag on the sail. And he went back to Ireland with this young dead bird to offer to the wife of the one that was watching from the waves. And she stood there watching those waves crash on the shore, and she had seen that red sail coming, and she knew what that meant. And when she saw that bird with a heart torn out of it, her tears had run dry down her face, and she had nothing left but a sigh of grief and pity. And she picked up that beautiful bird and held it to her chest. And she took out 2 different sticks and she clapped them together, and a small agile boat formed there on the shore, and she walked carefully onto it, and it quickly went away, and mist descended. And from that day onwards, Fionn the Fianna did not know what happened to them, but she kept on going, not knowing which way to go, but letting her heartbeat flurry in her chest and go where she knew she must, by the way the winds were washing the waves around the boat. And she was in amongst 3 times 50 islands of the other world until she saw 2 birds flying overhead, carrying together 1 dead bird. And she steered the boat to follow these beautiful coloured birds, and they landed on a strange rock. And she landed her boat next to it and seemed to have to climb upon it until she climbed up and saw other birds' nests around on this rock and this grass. And there she saw the 3 birds leap up and fly away, where there was once 2 and 1 dead. And now she put her own beautiful husband, now a bird with no heart in it, on this island, hoping, without any knowing what might actually happen, with just closing her eyes and knowing to trust in something greater than her. And when she did that, she felt the grass next to her stir. And she looked up. There was your man with the big gun on the screen. And he said, "Shit, sorry, did I die?" Didn't mean to do that. Sorry for that. We thought I might. On the plus side, the King of Plains, well, he's dead now. So we're grand. And it could have been that they lived happily ever after. We don't really know. All that's known is that with a lot of skins, he came back to the Fianna because he wanted to see Fionn one more time. They had kind of set up a bit of a connection. And so he knocked on the door of the feasting hall, and when the door was answered, they saw two shining creatures there. Well, they had such an amazing radiance coming from them that they all stood back and gasped. And they asked who they were and where were they coming from and what did they want at all. And a lot of skins said, pointing to Fionn, that you owe me money. Fionn said, that's ridiculous. I owe no man alive money at all. The only man I owe a debt to, but he died in a tragic battle in a way where time seemed to move differently. That skin said, yeah, that was me. And so they entered in, had a great feast, and merriment began until the lad of skins took his earnings with his wife, and they went away. Where some say they're still out there having a crack to this day. That's your point, Lucy. Right, one story in. A load of fish, a load of chips. It's gas to see all the fish and chips here. It's lovely. Are you all alright? You all doing okay? Just give the live stream a little one of these, look. Whoa. Wave to the people. There's two of them. Well, there's maybe 20. There you go now. This is mad. We're still figuring out this thing. I'm going to tell you one short story. That was a bit mental. It was mental. Anyway, we'll tell you one quick short story before the break, and then we'll get back cracking into a big, long, Lugh-centric story for Lughnasadh. But this story, well, it's an episode, and it's taken from the Battle of Ventry. And of late, thanks to mostly Oisin and his creative genius over there in the corner, we've been putting together a radio play that's not a radio play type podcast story thing. Do we describe it better than that? I think we did. At some stage.
You probably could.
Listen to it with headphones instead.
Basically, listen to it on headphones would be grand. So we were doing the Battle of Ventry, this big, epic Fianna battle, because we've done the Táin Bó Cúailnge a number of times, and the Cuchulainn, the Ulster cycle, and we realised we were kind of missing a Fianna epic, one that spanned a whole season. It's fucking spanned since lockdown, lads. It's been like, it's a lot, but we had to cut out loads of really great bits in it. And so this is one of the episodes that we had to cut out, that I'm going to tell you now. Right? And oh yeah, listen to the rest of it on the podcast. Alright.
No spoilers.
No, shit. How do I know?
I've seen it.
Okay. Now the Fianna were in Ireland.
Spoiler.
It's a part of the story. Okay, I'll give you the intro, and then you can figure it out after that. The Fianna had heard a great army was coming to Ireland. The king of the world was said to come with a force so vast and huge it was going to conquer Ireland and demand huge taxes be paid, taking all of the plenty and all of the greatness out of the land. And no one could stand up to the king of the world and a huge army, because he had an army of dog heads and cat heads that could rip people apart. So some stories say. Even the Tuatha Danann, those brilliant, famous, slick and fast fighting faction of the other world, could hardly stand against them. But Fionn, he knew there was only a number of places that such a vast fleet could land, and so he sent lookouts on top of every grand big beach of Ireland. There was a rake of them up in Donegal. Fucking just rake of lads up in Donegal. It's I go? And then he said, fuck it, there's loads of places. More lookouts sent and more lookouts were sent. Along the whole coast of Ireland, everyone's waiting, everyone's watching, and waiting to alert the rest of the Fianna by sounding the door Fiann. That great call that went all the way down to your toes and began to resound from the next hilltop to the next hilltop until all of Ireland was shouting together to alert the Fianna of where to find the fight. A lad named Con Critter was on Ventry Bay. He hadn't slept particularly well the previous night. He was a young fella, and it was raining, and he decided to huddle up with a cloak over his head. And well, he missed the whole landing of a giant fleet of ships. And when he woke to see a huge lash of ships out in Ventry Bay, he said it would have been better the day he was born to be killed. And so instead of alerting the Fianna there and then, he realized forts were burning because the king of somewhere, or rather I think it was the king of Spain, was out burning to get provisions for the army. And so Con Critter went running down to face them. And, well, luckily for him, he met 3 daughters of the king of Tiber, who cast a spell on him to make it look like a whole army was running around him. And he ran and he chased the king of Spain back to his ship and fought him single-handed till he was dead. And then he called out for single combat because he had to claim back his name. He had to win honor for himself. And as he fought in single combat, he picked 1 and then 2 at a time as they came to him. Still not thinking to alert the Fianna, but that wasn't really on his mind at the time. And then Cuchulainn, the strong man of the Fianna, the huge boulder-like shoulders and the boulder of a head as well, he came down and he saw this entire army on Ventry Bay, and he called out to Con Critter, what is he doing? Has he alerted the Fianna yet? And Con said, no, but you better do it. Cuchulainn said, fuck if I'm going now, without reddening my hands. And so he gave a belly roar and he asked the king of the world to send him his strong man, because he was the strong man of the Fianna, the strongest man in Ireland, and he wanted to bear wrestle with whoever was his strong man. The king of the world looked. A man named Cuchulainn. And Cuchulainn, he was huge. He said, that's my fight. And he walked out. He was the size of a ship one way, and the other way another boat standing on top of that ship. That's how big he was. And he was only wearing a tiny little skirt. I mean, it was actually a really manly leather thing, but it's a tiny little skirt. And he had bathed in the blood of a dragon, and the blood of snakes, and the blood of lions, because he thought it was a really good look. And he came out looking like a demon from the other world. He was so huge, he picked up a rock to scratch in between his toes. And he said, yeah, I'll fight you. Cuchulainn had many regrets at that moment. And something soft and squelchy went down between his legs. But he said, right, fuck it, we're here anyway. Let's go for it. And they fought with vim and vigor. The bashing of their fists woke all the babies on that peninsula, all the way down to Murriach in the north. They were waiting to hear the crashing of what they thought were mountains bashing against one another, but it was the fists of the 2 strong men of Ireland and of the king of the world. But eventually, Cuchulainn, he managed to grab his arms all the way around Cuchulainn and squeezed him so much that blood poured from his fingertips, and now blood came oozing out of the eyes of Cuchulainn and of the mouth as he felt his insides being crushed by the huge strength of this man, until he called out, hold on the fuck, hold on, give me a second, fuck you, calm down. Something like that. Come here, if you kill me now, I'll just be dead and no one will see me, because we're in a bit of a cove. Look, we're surrounded by sand dunes, so no one can see me. So let's go there in front of all of the ships of the king of the world, and I'll kneel down and I'll tell all of them that you're the strong man, you're the big man, and I think you're great. And Cuchulainn said, yeah, I'm okay with that. And so Cuchulainn dragged him on out, and he threw him down the ground, and he walked up with his tiny, tiny little man skirt on to stand there, thinking he was fucking awesome. And well, Lugh bent down low to pretend to bow to him, and then, well, he gave him one hell of a fucking uppercut, knocking the brains around in his head. And when he fell down, he fell, and as he grabbed his feet, he crashed his Cuchulainn's head off the nearest rock. But he said that's not going to do him, so he kept on crashing on every single rock that he could find until the rocks were powder and the head was bloody mess. And then Lugh said, we better go get the fucking two of the Dannon, because there's not one of the Fianna can stand against that army of the King of the World. That's asking for trouble. To find out next what happened next, you'll have to listen to the podcast. Thank you very much, lads. We're going to take a little break there, and yeah. So.
It actually smells like a real chip rope here. We'll be back in 10.
I got them where I was like,
Your favorite witches are in
better than the Robert story.
Nearly top.
I'm actually
I'm not sure what you're
someone's been skipping
Actually, the string was
no, so and so. John would help us. Sorry.
yeah, into one the You're gonna remember what you're doing.
That's how you don't have to study for it. We're going to remember all this. The wine tastes
It's sorry, it's a
Right, so here we go. Act 2, the second half of the evening, as you want to say. We're thoroughly enjoying this. Thanks very much for coming out. We hope you are too as well. It's a bit strange, this whole thing, but don't worry, we have an even stranger story for you. So, if you haven't already, if you're listening at home over there, do listen on earphones. Put the old earphones on, and you'll be in the room with us. There's a rake of people on, that's class. And if you haven't done already, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. For some reason, that eventually would make sense for me. I don't know, monetizing creativity. Who thought of that? Mad.
Better live streams.
Better live streams.
Interactive.
Global mythology, something stories. Now, Nuada woke up, drained of energy, ashen white, and he felt fever. He'd gone through some dreams, death, destruction, pillars of Moichura, bards and poets standing atop tall pillars, clash of armies fighting. But in this fever dream he was recalling the battle, and as he rolled, felt a sharp pain. An arm he had previously had was no longer there. It had been cut off in the first battle of Moichura, when the Tuatha Danann, those that we know as the Fae or the Fairy or the good people, when they landed here they fought for this land. And Nuada was their king. And now without an arm he could no longer be king, because to be king you had to represent the land, and the land had to be whole and perfect, and so a king had to be whole and perfect in their body, otherwise the land would go into disrepair and ruin. And so he called for Dean Keck, the greatest physician of the Tuatha Danann, and he had learned magic, so as the Tuatha Danann had followed the goddess Danu as they went to the magical islands of Morius, Corius, Falius, and Indius. And he had specialized in the healing arts. And so he plucked a hair from Nuada's head, and he whispered a spell, skin to skin, bone to bone, sinew to sinew, and he grew from this little hair a silver arm that replaced the arm Nuada had lost, and went into the socket that was now empty. And Nuada looked down at his new silver arm, and well, he claimed the name Nuada of the silver arm from that day out. He went to take his kingship, but the men were happy, the women were not, because cold touch or something wasn't the same anyway. A silver arm is not the same. And so they demanded a new king replace the old, who was now not whole. And so they called for Breast the Beautiful. She was so beautiful that things were called a breast if it was worthy of the beauty of comparison to him. Now, to make a long story short, he made a bit of a fuck of it, lads. He basically made a ball of the whole situation. He started charging taxes on the Tuatha Danann. And no one had known, because he was very pretty and already asked questions, but he had a father that was a Fomorian, a Fuimura, one of the people that had dominion over this sea. And they lived there, out there on Tory Island, and beneath the waves. And they were the raiders and the plunderers. And they were led by Balor of the Evil Eye and the 7 other kingdoms and kings. And this guy could just look at you and melt you. Not in the sexy way. No, whereas his father had been a Fuimura, and so he paid tribute to the Fomorians to keep them happy, but also to gain favor with them. And he gave them a third of the grain, a third of the crop, a third of the cattle, and a third of the children born every year from the Tuatha and from Ireland to the Fuig Muira. And still, people grumbled, people gave out. And even though he put the great heroes of the Tuatha under such tasks and work, and the Dagda and Lugh the smith, and even Dean Keck the healer were so burdened with work they couldn't enjoy their days. No one gave up. No one asked to replace the king until a bard, a poet, came to the house of the king. And after his storytelling and his music playing, he was left into a cold room with no bed on the floor, nothing but cold, wet oats with water. And the only thing to drink was water. Well, with the fucking cheek of him, he wrote such a sonnet, such an outrageous verse that everyone of Ireland wanted to pose the king after they heard this great satire that was now all over Ireland. No one wanted Brest to be the king, and they demanded him to be deposed. He ran with his tail between his legs back to the Fomorians to try and strike up an army to attack the Tuatha. Nuada now realized he had to become whole to become the king, and so even though Dean Keck had done a great thing by creating this silver arm for Nuada, he couldn't be whole. And he went looking for Dean Keck's son. He went looking for one of the Tuatha that had the essence of life flowing through him. He didn't try, he just knew how to do these things. And it was known. And so Nuada asked him to give him back his arm, to grow it from bone. Miak asked him and begged him not to ask this of him, because he knew his father would be furious to be shown up in such a way, but Nuada said it was for the good of the country. And that day, Miak, the son of Dean Keck, well, he had no spell, he just had feeling, and he felt, and he put his hands on Nuada's empty socket and grew back an arm that was his own, and now he was whole, and now he could be king. Miak knew his father would be furious, but they had bigger fish to fry, because all of the Tuatha knew that Brest was coming with Balor of the evil eye and the Fomorians. That's to summarize, bad guys against the good guys, gonna be a battle. And so Nuada, of the previously but not so anymore silver arm, went to Tara, and he stood there, and he called all of those who could help him out in the battle they come to enter into Tara. And he put a gatekeeper standing watch, told him not to let anyone in who was not going to be a good bit of use.
Now, while all this carnage was happening, there was a prophet woman called Bray of the Mountain, and she called over to Lugh while he was sick and told him, now, there's a prophet of this guy called Cuchulainn, master of all, and he's the one that can defeat Balor. It's actually his grandson, you don't need to worry about the details. It was sneaky and funny, but we had a bit of crack with it. Anyhow, Manon on MacLear had come out at the request of Bray and caught Lugh, the grandson of Balor, and brought him back to Tangara. And Lugh was a great little kid. He was full of enthusiasm. He wanted to know everything, so we just kept asking him, why? Why do we do this? Why do we run with the animals? Why do we hunt? What does this do? Why is there clouds in the sky? Why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? How come time axes are really weird here? And normally, like, I love playing the boy game with kids. There are loads of answers. We just keep going all day long. But Lugh remembered all of the answers everybody gave him, so if you gave him a different answer the next time, he'd be like, that's not what you said the last time. You said the sky was blue last time because there was marshmallows. Not because it's like, you know, a reflection of an apple. Stop lying to me. Anyway, Lugh spent his childhood and he learned so many skills. He spent time with Jean Kecht, he learned how to be a healer. He spent time with Cuchulainn the Smith, he learned how to make weapons. He trained with the greatest warriors. He also kind of spent a bit of time with the Dagda and learned how to cook and learned how to play really cool music. Traveling back and forth from Ireland to Tirtangara to Tirlanoe, all these places. Had a great childhood, but all this time he knew, Manannán had always told him, you're destined for greatness now when you grow up. You're going to have to rid Ireland of this great evil. So they sent him off. After the 7 years had passed in Ireland, a great cloud of doom started to approach towards Tara, and Manannán could see this. And he said, Lugh, it's time for you now to travel to Tara. But of course, because time traveled differently, Lugh was a fully grown man and had learned all of these really cool things. So he got up to the gates of Tara. And when he got to the gatekeeper, he was kind of running into a bit of problems. And the gatekeeper said to him, what use are you, Lugh? What can you do for us? And Lugh said, well, I'm a great chef. You know, do you need a chef? The gatekeeper said, we've got the Dagda. He has cauldron of plenty. Last week we had curry. Tonight we're having Mexican. It never runs out. It's like, come on, man. You know, try harder than that. He said, well, I'm really good at making weapons. Like, I'm really good at making swords. And he looked at him and he said, we've got Cuchulainn the Smith. You know, he's the greatest smith that's ever lived. What about people that are sick? I'm a healer. I can heal people. I'm really good at that. I've learned a lot of natural remedies and good medicine. And gatekeeper said, no. We have Jean Kecht. He invented cyborgs. He put a cyborg arm on Nuada or Riddler. Like, come on, lads, what are you doing? He looked around and he said, you got anyone here that's checking everybody's temperature just to make sure we're all safe? No. I told you, it's Jean Kecht. Come on. And he looked straight at the gatekeeper and says, have you got anyone that's really good at all of these things? Because, like, you know, everybody's got their own skills, but I'm good at everything. Literally everything. And the gatekeeper said to him, he's like, hang on a second. Are you the Ildana? And Lugh thought, yeah, I am the Ildana. That was what Manannán told me to tell you when I got here, but I forgot. Yes, I'm the Ildana. The gatekeeper went inside and he said to Nuada, the Ildana is outside and he wants to come in. And Nuada said, well, let him in. This is the prophecy. Lads, there's a bit of hope here now. We're not going to get completely wiped out. So, Lugh went inside into Tara, and he got a bit of testing, you know. Ogma didn't trust him for a start off. He said, well, how good are you? Are you good at throwing stones? And he picked up a big, huge stone and fired it over the hill, right over the walls, and it smashed into 3 pieces on the ground. Lugh ran outside as fast as a flash of light, picked it back up with one hand, and lobbed it back over the wall, where all 3 pieces then formed back together, landing exactly where they were in the first place. And Ogma said, yeah, alright, you got to pass. So Lugh looked around to everybody and he introduced himself to everybody inside Tara. He asked them all, what are your skills? What are you good at? And then as he went up into Lugh's war chamber, he looked around and he said, right, I need you to dig your healing pits at this corner, and this corner. I need you to set up your furnaces here, here, and here to go to the smith. He sent the Dagda off on a couple of weird quests. One of them was to go to get the Marrigan on side. That was fun. The other one was to go and have a chat with the Fomorians, and they fell in a lot of stuff, and he got really sick and puked up a couple of islands. But that doesn't matter. They got back and they were all ready for the war. Now, when the Fomorians arrived, there was absolute destruction and carnage. 3 days and 3 nights the battle raged on, with Lugh standing at the back waiting for his moment, and he was commanding all of the troops. Every day both sides lost hundreds of warriors. Some of them were restored into healing kits, and some of them there was no hope for it all, until eventually on the 4th day, Balor, he They wheeled him out. He was ancient and decrepit at this stage. The nasty evil eye had 7 cloaks over it. And all it would take was one look from his eye to decimate all of the troops of the Tuatha. Now, the prophecy of the eye was, once he lifted off his first cloak, oh, that's when all the grass started to go brown. When they lifted off the second cloak, the birds fell out of the sky. When they lifted off the third cloak, the trees and the leaves started to burn and smolder. When they lifted off the fourth cloak, all the cattle in the fields and all the animals started to cook where they were. And when they lifted off the fifth cloak, the rivers turned to steam and the lakes started to boil. And as they began to lift off the sixth cloak, it was prophesied that all evil would come out through the seventh and end the world. But at that point, Lugh jumped, leapt out of the back of the battlefield, ran across Tara, jumped over a wall, picked up a giant stone, and jumped up onto a cliff, and with a mighty shot, he hurled that stone straight across the battlefield, straight into Balor's eye, knocking him backwards in his head. And as the evil blasted out through the back of Balor's head, it obliterated the troops of the Fomorians, and then it began to burn all the way down and down and down into the center of the earth. Right in this place now called Lugh, where it still burns to this day. One of those portals left.
Now, some people in the story there, that lake, well, there was a hazel tree that grew out of it once upon a time, and some lads made a shield and gave it to the leader of the Fianna. That's a different story, isn't it? See, at the end of that battle, there was carnage, and everyone had to gather their might and their energy, and there was a few things to be done. Lugh, when he found out his father had been killed, it was very sad for him, but he found out it wasn't in the battle. The sons of Cuchulainn had done it. And so Lugh, Lawfather, the sun deity of the Celts, well, he went and he sought some form of revenge against the sons of Cuchulainn, but that's a story for another time. The Dagda, he found out the harp that he played, vigor and victory into the hearts of his listeners. Any mood that he wished to play, he would make them feel. And it was also his job to play the seasons into the right time. But he also liked his drink, so that's why he's someone had nicked his harp. And so, well, he'd go get the harp back. But that's also another story for another time. Gugnu, the smith. I'm sure something happened with him, but I don't know what it was. He was trying to sort out all of the shields and swords and stuff. But Dean Keck was there, and he had a healing well, and he was the greatest healer of them all. And he was the father of a cowherd named Cian. And Cian, well, he had become the father of the boy Lugh, the ill dog. And so he was Lugh's grandfather. The now king of the Tuatha Danann had a grandfather that was the greatest healer in Ireland, but he wasn't the greatest, was he? His son was the greatest, as he'd been shown up. And so this anger stayed in Dean Keck, and it, like a cancer, grew, and it came so hot and so ready that it built up inside of him until all of his body was quaking and shaking with it. And so angry was he that he took out the sword and the sheath and stared down his own son Miach as his own daughter Amran stood watched in horror as her own father went to strike a death blow at his son Miach. But Miach was so in tune with healing and the essence of life itself that no matter which way he moved, every blow that he was struck, every time that he was caught, he would simply put his hands upon himself and heal himself.
He would grab the right herb to rub into the leg, and every ointment he poured upon himself, well, he was fixed, he was new, he was breathing back again the life that could not run out of him, because he was living and breathing that essence of being, no matter how much destruction was being poured upon him. And Kek was so vicious and furious in that attack, he did not let up. And so a whole day and a night went by as he was being cut down, and the energy went out of Mick as he was trying to run away from his furious, angry, jealous father, that at one time finally gave him a death blow, cutting his head clean from his shoulders. And as he fell down, his sister watched with horror as she saw her brother, who was so beautiful, and in everything all he wanted to do was heal and help, fall down dead for the fact that he had only helped someone. And as she watched, it seemed that the sun didn't move in the sky, because she just watched the body become decomposed, and go into the ground as a mound grew up and around it. And the rocks that were around seemed to fall and tumble out of the soil. It became so rich and so fertile that brilliant, beautiful flowers and herbs and grasses of all of the colors she had ever seen just grew right there in front of her in such an elaborate way. She knew inside of her that these were the secrets of all of the healing of the world. And so she gathered them, and she seemed to listen to the other world chant, a way to now know how to weave these flowers into a beautiful form of something that she created there, just a simple tableau of all of these beautiful herbs and flowers to make the right ointments. As she wove them, she knew this was the right thing to do, because this was how everyone would heal themselves. This was how everyone could know how to always belong and be at peace and in harmony, and everything she did was now in tune with what she was doing, and it was simply from the ground right into her hands, just letting it go through her. But Dean Keck had been watching, and he saw and he knew, and that jealousy that was in him for killing his own son that was better than him, he saw his daughter now putting together a way for people never to feel illness, never to feel sick or sad or scared or alone. And so, with hate in his heart for feeling that he would need his position of brilliance, he tore up that beautiful tableau and he threw it to the winds. And his daughter, she shook her head, but then she had a vision instead of a more beautiful tapestry. And though everything was blown to the winds, she picked up the seeds and she scattered them. And she picked up what were flowering and she began to weave. Very slowly, very steadfast. She went walking and following the winds of the other world, and this too, to find all of the healing herbs and flowers. And some say she is still weaving out there too. I hope you enjoyed that story. It was a different way of telling the first and second battle of Moitura. They're really long stories. That took a lot of walking up and down Oisin's kitchen last night. Anyway, condensing can be hard when Irish mythology goes off in a million different directions. But I hope you enjoyed that. We've been telling that story since the very first time we did a theatre show, and that was 4 years ago this week. And the dream of Ethlyn was that story, and it was all about Lugh being class. So yeah. We've just enough time to tell one last little story. Do you want to hear one last story?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah! Everyone has to leave real quick after that.
Okay, you have to leave really quick after. You guys don't, but you know, you can get all hyped up in the like. Okay, so when I was out in the Wild West, I came across a place in Clare, and there was a fucking story there. So deadly. Alright, so we all know Lugh. We've gone through who he was, that's fine. Lugh was class. He kind of slipped in between the other world and this world, and every now and again he'd father a child. That one time that he did that with a girl called Declan, on camera now. Oh, Jesus. My sister's shaking her head. And Declan was the mother of... for fuck's sake, lads. Come on, let's do regulars. Cuchulainn, yes, there you go. Alright, Cuchulainn was born after being the son of Lugh, father, the shining one. And, well, Cuchulainn was beautiful. But the thing about Cuchulainn was, he might have had 3 colours in his hair and 7 hero lights in his eyes, and he could transform himself to be furious and huge and hulk out essentially in a furious mode of fighting. And he was better than all of the rest of the heroes of the Ulster Cycle and the Crave Rule, but that's not what got the girls. What got the girls was the really, really sad eyes. Because Cuchulainn had the saddest eyes in her. And I'm telling you, there was that one time that he got married, and Emer was his equal in every way, and well, they were very happy, and they were lovely, and they were all great, and they, you know, they were matched fantastically, but, well, God bless her, she was a very giving soul, and she was allowed to share, and she never got jealous, except for that one time. There's a whole story, but it was the only jealousy of Emer. Anyway. He had a few, what were they, cyber stalkers? Let's just call them cyber stalkers. There was a few of them, and there was a Cailleach of a particular peninsula, and it was on Loop Head, down in now what you might call the County Clare, up the banner. Well, you see, this woman, Mag was her name, she was obsessed with Cuchulainn, and every time she closed her eyes after seeing his sad, sad eyes, she came upon the vision of his beautiful 3-coloured hair and the 7 hero lights shining out of his eyes, and how quickly and swiftly he moved. She wanted to caress and hold and just something him, and well, anyway, she followed him, and Cuchulainn wasn't very happy because he was in love with Emer, and eventually he decided to put this to rest. He tried to send her a couple of letters, he tried to get the guards involved, but it didn't work. You know, she wasn't adhering to social distancing at all. And so he said, fuck this anyway. And he went all the way down to Loop Head, and he said he'd fight her. And she just said, well, I want to ride you. And he said, no, that's not the point. It's not what's happening. We're having a wrestling match, not that type of wrestling match. Right, so they fought, and he tried to get away, and she was trying to have another fucking thing involved, all together going on. And he was ducking and diving and trying to give her one of these, but she was a Cailleach, you see, so she had magic, and she was throwing shapes, as well as throwing magic spells at him, and all of a sudden, he left across a great cavity in that peninsula, and there was the Lover's Leap, you see. There's a great rock, a stack, just standing outside there. You wouldn't, you absolutely shouldn't try and jump across because you wouldn't make it. But she was able to lift herself up with a breath of wind and blow herself with a magic spell to land on this high stack of rock. And on that stack of rock, Cuchulainn thought, fuck it, she's followed me. And she jumped over her and tried to kick her and tried to trip her, but she wasn't having a fall at all. And she was still there, trying to hug onto him and trying to lick him. And he fuck this, and he left across on the island of Ireland. And she just didn't really think of it. And she left the grass after realizing she couldn't fucking jump it at all, and she fell. All the way down, and she fell, and Cuchulainn saw her but didn't get too close to the edge because it was quite a long drop, and as she fell, she splashed into the water. The waves turned grey, and all across the coast of Ireland, the water splashed red as it crashed across the waves. Her blood seeped into the ground, and all the sound that rang through the air was her last dying yell. And from that moment forwards, that bit of rock is known as Lover's Leap. Thank you, YouTubers. Did you turn me off? You fucker, yeah. Thank you, YouTubers. Thank you, Instagrammer peoples. Thank you for liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel.
Not you
Thanks,
guys.
lads. We'll be back in Harbour Bar. Thanks so much to Harbour Bar.